Hi, I'm Ronnie from Ronnie's Garage. We're having our monthly tech meet, and today we're going to be talking about the Silver Shadow series, the differences between the Silver Cloud and the Silver Shadow, and a lot of the features, hydraulics, and all that kind of stuff.
Is the Corniche a Silver Shadow?
Okay, it's a good question. The Corniche came out in 1971. It's a two-door model. The year before, in 1970, was called a Silver Shadow, Molnar Park Ward. The convertible was called a DHC, a drop head coupe. The hardtop was called a FHC, a fixed head coupe. So it's still a Silver Shadow based car. So when you talk about the brake fluid cars as opposed to the mineral oil cars, the Corniche was the premier model. And then when they came out with the Camargue, which is another premier model, they came out in '75. The premier models always got the newest technology. That's what I'm trying to get to. Silver Shadow used brake fluid through 1980. Now the Corniche, they went to mineral oil in 1979. So they were the test mules, basically. The most expensive cars were the test mules. But they upgraded stuff, like the Corniche and Camargue were the first ones to get these steering racks. When they went away from the regular, what do they call it, recirculating ball.
Yeah, recirculating ball.
Yeah. Greg's old friend of mine, he's a car nut. He's had, well, yeah, you've had some incredible cars, and you probably still do. Yes, I guess so. I call it an affliction. We all suffer from the same affliction. Hi, I'm Ronnie. I'm a car nut.
And there's no hope.
And the Silver Wraith is the long wheelbase.
The Silver Wraith 2 is the long wheelbase Shadow. So the Silver Wraith, there's a Silver Wraith right behind you. Okay, that was built in the 50s. Okay, when the Silver Shadows, the early range up to before the Shadow 2, the long wheelbase was just called a Silver Shadow LWB, long wheelbase. And what they did is they added 4 inches right behind the driver's door. So the rear doors are longer, there's more leg room for your passengers in the back. They made the back window smaller, kind of like an opera window. It's kind of simulating a personal limousine. Now on the Silver Shadow 2, they came out with the Silver Wraith 2, which is just a long wheelbase Shadow, but they called it a Silver Wraith 2.
But mechanically it's all the same.
All the same, it's just a little longer, that's all.
And what's the maintenance on the tranny and the differential?
That's a good question. I like to change the differential fluid on the major service, which usually is 2 years. 12,000 miles is what the recommended
And what
was.
kind of oil?
Huh?
What kind of oil? Just regular gear oil?
That's, yeah, just regular 80, 90 weight. You can go up a little heavier if you want, if you got one that's a little noisy. One thing about the noise on these is that rubber mounted differential, not only does those have those vibration dampeners on there, but the rubber mount absorbs a lot of the whine. When they came out with the mineral oil cars, they had a lot of differential whine problems, a lot of them, because it's not as soft mounted.
All right. And the tranny?
The tranny is okay, the transmissions, that's a great one. That Silver Cloud has a hydromatic 4-speed that they came out, I think 48 or 49, GM built. And they use them in the Cadillacs and all the big cars. And so it's a 4-speed, automatic, pretty herky-jerky, primitive. This has a Turbo 400. Bulletproof transmission, super easy to work on. These you want to do that. It was, I forget what the interval, I think, is every 2 years. Yes. Yeah. So
And when
modern.
When you say Turbo 400, I know Turbo 400's for Ford.
No.
Just a completely different creature, right?
Ford didn't have a Turbo 400 that I know.
Turbo 350. Oh, maybe I'm thinking Chevy.
Chevy, yeah. Chevy had the Turbo 400, and then they had the Turbo 350.
Right.
And the big difference on those is I think the 350 doesn't have that center support. These were like truck transmissions, big Cadillac transmissions. The internal parts are all the same. Tail housings and bell housings are different because they don't bolt up, I don't think, the same. Great transmission. 3-speed though. And then they went to the 700 later on. I think it was 700? No, the 4L80 was the next version they went to, which was a 4-speed computer-controlled transmission. One other thing that when they went from the Shadow 1, the Shadow 1 had a really big exhaust, bigger than this, single muffler going out, and they go through a first resonator, then they had a round resonator, which this doesn't have. This has twin. This is a twin exhaust all the way out, except for the crossover pipe here. And then they had another resonator, really, and the tailpipe was bigger, real quiet, barely hear it. That's one thing I like about those. When they went to this with the rack and pinion steering, seems like more performance, and we'll get to that. They went to the dual exhaust, has 2 catalytic converters in here. And you wonder, why do they put those screens on there? If you park on grass, when the car's hot, you can catch your car on fire. These are heat screens, okay? So this is dual all the way to the back except for this crossover pipe. This crossover pipe blends it, so it technically qualifies as a single exhaust. A true dual exhaust would not have anything connecting the two
From
systems.
a legal or performance standpoint,
What?
that it technically becomes technically legal.
Well,
technically-
smog rules. So on a dual exhaust car, they're supposed to put 2 probes in. These you only have to put 1 in. This is part of the EGR system, which reduces that NOx I talked about. And the way that does it is when you give the car gas, and it's more likely to not burn everything right. So when you give it gas, you're dumping fuel, dumping air, and your timing is supposed to advance. Advanced timing causes pre-ignition. That's that NOx gas. So what they do to correct that is they take exhaust gas and pump it in with it. And it affects performance because you're pretty much diluting the mixture. Plus, the Turbo 400 transmission is a vacuum operated. The signal, the load signal from the engine is vacuum. So when you're driving a car with a vacuum modulator, when you're off the throttle, when you're cruising, it's super high vacuum. As soon as you give it gas, it drops the vacuum. So they design it so that when you give it gas, it'll downshift. There's a valve on the side here that changes the valving. So and on that car over there, it's a mechanical linkage. That's how they sense the engine. It's really hard to get right on those mechanical ones. These are just so simple and elegant, I think. And then computer-controlled cars, it's all electrically controlled. So they have speed sensors, they have load sensors. It's all electric, and then they have valves that just switch the gears. This is a lot of mechanical stuff. The big mechanical valve bodies, the springs, and it's really for me. It's really hard to imagine the engineers, how they designed all that hydraulic system with all these different springs and different valves and all that, and to make them work right. To me, it's just like voodoo.